David still can't hear me. Now he can hear me. Check it out, guys. We have a cool overlay now. I think this looks really cool. Actually, I'm really proud of myself. All right. Welcome back to the Ludic Society. Welcome back to Stockroach after a week of us taking a break from it to look at new games made by young creators on r/ARGs, not ARGN. We could have looked there, would have found a different thing. I want to quickly do some introductions, and then we'll do David will read our land acknowledgement, and maybe David's cat will appear on stream. Who knows?
He's around here somewhere. I think he's actually joined Tony in the bedroom to play some Far Cry. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. How adorable. So my name's Wren. I'm a master's student at UWM in the English program, Plan H, and I'm your host, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host.
I'm David. I'm a PhD student here at UW Milwaukee. Research all kinds of things. Right now, I'm in the process of writing a proposal that has to do with Venti from Genshin Impact, so that's fun.
Oh my god, are you really leaning hard into the Genshin stuff? That'll be interesting.
I'm writing about the fan labor stuff.
Right.
That's why I messaged you and said it's funny that this fan video has the word Nani in it, even though that's Japanese and not Chinese. But that's part of my argument, is that regional identity and national identity and queerness is very blurry.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Well, hey, maybe we have to go back to watch more Genshin fan labor at some point. But David, would you read our land acknowledgement?
No. You'll just read my article when it's published. No, I'm not that conceited. Okay, so we acknowledge that in Milwaukee, we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigami, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. And
fantastic. Oh,
fact this week, in order to add more to the discussion than just land acknowledgement, Wisconsin is the 4th worst state when it comes to incarcerating indigenous peoples per capita. So we in Wisconsin have a lot of work to do, and a land acknowledgement is like one very, 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 very tiny little thing to do in our state. So yeah, that's the extra fact of the day.
Fantastic. I mean, not fantastic, but I'm glad that we can inform our audience of such important issues as they arise.
Yes.
Yeah. No, so in the meantime, while we were gone, I fucked around with Streamlabs and then gave Vehemence a little backdoor to see the new. I sent some screenshots over to them of the layout, and I think it's really good. I think we're going to add Morgan in the bottom left when Morgan joins, and then I'll add another box for the chat then. Chat should still appear on screen though, so now that we're at least in this mode, so you guys will still be part of the experience and the VOD. It'll be great. I don't know who we have with us tonight. I hope people are here. I know we had to switch the time around, so if people couldn't make it, then that sucks, but it kind of is what it is. At least we'll know whether Sunday evenings are good times, and or not, which who knows. Anyway, so what are we doing today? What are we covering today? Well, we picked up last time and got to this point where we were going to talk about huge developments in the Garfield ARG with Stockroach, right? And it's been a little bit, so in case people have forgotten the direction that we were going in, Stockroach, of course, is an ARG about a 16-ish year old guy trying to pretend to be a 30-year-old stockbroker and doing so fairly poorly and just trying to live life in the middle of trying to run this YouTube channel. And we get an interesting view into the backstage of his life through these kinds of accidents that occur over the course of his recording. We finished up with him doing a recording with Snakeskin and then dropping his computer, and we're talking about kind of the hypermediation that goes through there. And we're going to get another opportunity to talk more about the weird visualization of media that this ARG brings to the table today, which will be kind of fun, I think. By doing huge developments in the Garfield ARG and then cycling around to Stockroach's own in-world ARG, Stockario in the Digital World. And I'll be very interested to have you along, David, because this is there's some interesting things I think that you'll be able to pick up on and talk about that will be helpful here.
So it's like an ARG within an ARG?
It is an ARG that he, quote, found within an ARG.
So like in the diegesis, I learned how to use that word, of the world, Stockario is an ARG that he found.
Well, it's not. So I say found, but there's some background, and maybe r/ARGs really was the best thing to do in the meantime between these two episodes, right? Because r/ARGs is a bunch of people saying they found ARGs, and what they really did is made them and said they found them in order to keep the veil that this is not a game, right? So this is very much the same situation where it's very obvious to ARG players who might be engaging with Stockroach that he did not find this ARG. He definitely made it. But he's telling us that it's found because the found object is the realistic object in terms of maintaining that aesthetic. So that makes sense. I know it makes the diegesis even more obnoxiously complicated, but, welcome to this shit.
Welcome to the internet.
Yeah. The Cubo Burnham. So why don't we pick up with huge developments in the Garfield ARG, and then we'll go from there into the Stockario and the digital world stuff. I want to remind you that the Garfield ARG came up first in investing in the ARG economy, which we watched a while ago. So this is kind of a callback episode, and I think really marks, like, the next two steps of this ARG mark a bit of a change in the direction of what is going on, where it feels very much up to this point like he is putting a lot of time into the maintenance of this character, and now that maintenance is going to shift a little bit. So let's get started. Let's watch huge developments in the Garfield ARG. Do tell me if audio is not good. Obviously, I need to get an ad blocker just for this show. I think that's probably going to be the next project here. Because I don't like using ad blocker very much, but I do think for this, I'd rather not just advertise a bunch of shit to people. All right, so I think this will be good.
All right, Money Grubs, what's up? Stockroach here. So, I know it's kind of rare for me to do a video that isn't directly related to finance or investing, vice versa, but sometimes something happens that is so big that it needs to have, not only does it need to have a video made about it, but it needs to have a Stockroach video made about it.
The biggest kind of video.
So you all probably know that I've been keeping a close eye for a long time on the Garfield ARG. Thinking, what's Jim Davis up to? When's he gonna drop the next little breadcrumb? But recently in my searching, I have begun to come across something that is deeply, deeply unforetold. Now, as you can see, this guy is not a cat. And he is not orange.
I love this so much, man.
For all I know, he doesn't even like lasagna. But every time I search for Garfield, he's there. He's taken up real estate. So okay. I'm thinking to myself, what does Andrew have to do with Garfield? And I was getting pretty...
He's kind of frozen in my head.
I was getting
from
not
the
angry
Spider-Man
necessarily,
days.
but I was getting pretty mad. I was getting pretty mad about
the first guest judge on Drag Race
until
UK, so that's what I'm thinking.
I looked a little more deeply into the history and the personhood of Andrew Garfield.
Cue the dramatic music.
Or should I say, Andrew Russell Garfield.
Sorry. I know I can't stop myself from laughing in this shit.
All right, so by now, I imagine that many of you, I imagine that many of you are already shaking your heads like I was in disbelief, but it doesn't end there.
ARG.
This is kind of how numerology works, you know? So there's that. There it is.
All right, so what we are looking at here is layers upon. I don't even know what to call it. Like, does this signify a Garfield Batman crossover or a Batman Garfield crossover? You can let me know in the comments what you think this is going to be, but all I know is that the Garfield ARG is bigger and bolder than any of us could have imagined, and I cannot wait to see what else Jim Davis has up his brilliant sleeve. Stockadoodle-doo.
It was a good coincidence.
And then he, like us, kind
Hey,
of
Siri!
closing out.
Stop the hit stop on the QuickTime recording. Stop QuickTime. Stop audio recording QuickTime.
Sorry, I can't help you with that here.
Hey Siri.
Stop
button recording. Stop the just turn off turn off the computer. I mean, no, turn off QuickTime.
Okay,
Oh, shoot.
turning off Jeremy's MacBook Air.
Come on.
My job is to make
Again, not really how that works, but great. Yeah, so the Garfield ARG, it's back. It's bold. It's exactly the kind of mistake you'd expect him to make. I love that the music is like specially composed just for this episode, too.
Spooky, spooky, Hallowookie.
Spooky
Well, it's funny, right? Because this is kind of like the parody. I shouldn't say the parody, right? But if we think of like the obsessive ARG player, where like everything is a clue, everything is a sign. Right? This is why ARGs and might be criticized, right? Is because it trains people to think of everything as being something to pay attention to, which could then lead into conspiracy theories. I would argue that doesn't really make sense in terms of ARGs because like most of them, well, I shouldn't say most of them, but I feel like the vast majority of them very deliberately construct a narrative world that's outside of the real world, quote unquote. And it's a game like any other, right? It'd be like saying like, well, people do say games train you to be capitalist consumption machines.
Yeah, well, it's always back to that seminal question of how much are we affected by media and how much does media actually affect us. It's a hard one. It's not something that I think that is super clear to answer, but I think also like any positive benefits conferred by the kind of pedagogical implications of like teaching someone how different types of encryption work or teaching someone how different aspects of the internet work through an ARG are also, you know, if designed in a way that confers information about conspiracizing, could be problematic if the correct boundaries aren't set. But I mean, like, you're right. It's kind of like saying I have a hard time believing that people would be more prone to conspiracy theories if they were involved with ARGs. In the same way, I have a hard time believing that people who play Call of Duty are more likely to shoot people in real life, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's less, it's not right, it's not as simple as a one-to-one action, right? Where it's like, well, ARGs obviously train people to look for everything, so that means people who play ARGs will be more prone to conspiracy theories, right? If anything, you can make the argument, right, that by learning to sift through meaningful and unmeaningful things, right, you can actually detect the truth, quote unquote, easier, right? I'm not making that argument either, but I think this video is making fun of this idea that somehow everything is connected and that ARGs themselves like are thought of training people of doing this, right?
Yeah, and this is kind of like very numerology. Oh, these numbers appear, and they appear here, and they appear here. It's the loosest of associations one could possibly make. But it's also something that I like. It's very national treasure. And I, I think that's a good thing. I do like national treasure quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think when we're playing these games, players develop certain tics over time. Like I have certain things that I'll fixate on and be like, ooh, this must be involved, when I'm involved in like the process of constructing the narrative. And it usually is helpful to have other players then who have different tics to be like, I don't know. But there is something kind of interesting in terms of like what players eventually choose to fixate on. Because I do think a lot of us do find one particular element that is often where we start looking for these kinds of connections, And it's kind of like, that's something I've noticed at the escape room job too. Like different escape room players who have been playing for a really long time will have certain like tricks that they look for in the escape room first. And sometimes they'll look to the point of like, even if it's not there, to the detriment of other more obvious solutions to the puzzle. So like, yeah, I think like, I don't know, that's, it's part of, it does seem to be part of the, literacy process in this case. If that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like, just like reading a book doesn't guarantee literacy, right? Or right, reading Mein Kampf doesn't guarantee you suddenly, ascribe to his ideologies. Right? It's the same thing with an ARG, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because it's literature and it's been legitimized for so long, right, that isn't taken as a given, whereas as it would be for something like an ARG.
Yeah, I do think there was a bit of panic to the point of detriment to the conversation when it came to QAnon and the subject of ARGs, right? Because there was a not small amount of individuals who had been designing it for a while who went, hey, doesn't this look kind of similar? And then for a while, some news networks were running with it. For some people, that must have been their first point of contact with the idea. And that's kind of not great for the field. But, then the reaction was, oh, shoot, well, now we can't say anything about this connection, even if we perceive it to exist, because it will, cause moral panic. And so on some level, people backed down, right? They were like, oh, well, this is not at all like this other thing, because if they there are some legitimate arguments to be made on either side, I think, as to whether QAnon, other conspiracies do look like these kinds of things. I mean, there's a somewhat of a historical precedent for it in Ong's hat. But, there's a nuanced conversation to be had that I think we have a hard time having because of the hotness of the media, if you will.
I think it's kind of cold.
Oh, McLuhan. Bad McLuhan references. My favorite thing to do on a Sunday night.
Absolutely rotted. I am reading, side note, I'm reading some of the things for Jocelyn's class. And one of them's talking about how the idea or concept of a queer archive, this author's like, by the way, like local museums just do this. And I'm like, I love you. Anyway.
That's kind of fantastic,
right? But I think this is pointing to something, even if the author of it didn't, quote unquote, didn't mean to do this, right? It's pointing to these wider discussions about ARGs and the inherent silliness of thinking that somehow it's going to lead people to be conspiracy theories about everything, right?
Mm.
And I think part of it is we obviously can tell that even his character doesn't really think this is real, right? We can tell because of his characteristics of throughout this ARG so far. This character is known to like put on airs, right, in order to appear to be knowledgeable, right? So we can tell that this is just another step in that process, right? It's very a meta step, but I would argue, right, we as people who have consumed and participated in this ARG know that he is making these connections, probably doesn't fully believe them though.
Right, and that's
nice double layer of satire, right?
Yeah. Yes. Cool. Ash Black just put something in chat. It's very similar to how the Eratus ARG, if it even was an ARG, sort of ran. The very conspiracy-esque with a lot of loose connections. Yeah. So Eratus is such a God. Eratus. Yeah. So there are a couple like ARGs that are incomplete or are, I guess, what you would call ooky spooky, David, where it's like, here's a bunch of small connections, creepy videos, little messages that have such tenuous connections that even if people try to assemble them, there's not a lot of meaning to be made, and there's a lot of there's more questions, and it's not great game design, but there have been several that have fit this bill. The Kanye Quest is another one. Kanye Quest had a layer underneath it, the little RPG Maker game. Maybe one day we'll play it on stream just to fuck around with it. But it had this like ascension layer underneath of it, and I have to say it's unclear exactly what was going on with that. It's unclear exactly how to diagnose what that is, but the connections that were being made were so tenuous and so abstract that it really like puts. I think there are ARGs, as Lashblog is pointing out, that like put people in a position where, because there's not enough narrative and game to like actually balance out strong connections, people start making these kinds of tenuous connections to try and make something of the game, which in its own way is kind of fascinating. You know, there's like so much life that has been given to these kind of myth status ones where it's like, okay, there's not a lot here, but everybody knows about it because it's fascinating that there wasn't a lot here and we don't know what to do with what we have.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's like a folkloric element that comes out of that level of uncertainty. I wish I knew. I need to like rewatch a bunch of videos on Eratus because it's been way too long and it's just a little bit outside of my my memory right now. But man, what a great comment. Thanks, Ash. So let's kick things down the road. Let's keep going. So we've got the Garfield ARG developments, and I think I took a look at this last time and I said to myself, like, hey, okay, we're starting to see this stuff come together. We're starting to see the interactivity of Stockroach kind of come at its head. And I really feel like now is the best time to cycle back to about 10, or I guess from where we are in the story, about 3 months ago, and talk about Stockario in the digital world. You may remember this image from way, way, way back when. I don't know if you can.
Oh yeah.
The Magisteria, and you may remember the like soft fan fiction-y thing we read a while back about Magisteria, and all of that's also kind of finally coming to a head in this thing we call Stockario in the digital world, aka the ARG that the Stockroach found and definitely did not make. So I want to go through these up into about the last episode here, the semi-finale. And I'll be very interested in like what you think is going on here. I also kind of want to talk about what kind of labor is happening in this particular concept. Like, how would we define what is being made here as far as like action in the narrative, because it's kind of bizarre in an awesome way. But here we go. Oh yeah, I had to restart it because I was trying to make sure I was like ready to go here. So here you go.
The digital realm.
The digital realm.
Wow, that's...
him doing shh for the sound effect is pretty great. So yeah, there's the first episode, right? Okay. So there's like a lot to chew on here. I love that Stockario, of course, is like a buffer version of Link.
Yeah.
Yeah, so go ahead.
So sorry, I think I might have got distracted, but what? So how did people discover this in relation to Right? Because this is a different YouTube.
It is a different YouTube channel, but it was linked directly in the investing in the ARG economy video. We just skipped it earlier
Gotcha.
because at that point it would have felt really disconnected from everything else that was going on. But now that we've gotten further into the piece, I think it makes a lot more sense to cycle back to it, especially since upcoming episodes are going to reference it a lot.
Okay. And all of these videos were posted when he mentioned this video.
Slowly over the course of like the last 3 months of in-game time, all of these were posted. So, and then there's a large gap between the finale and the rest of the episodes because the finale is incredibly important to the plot of Stockroach on the whole.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so maybe we should go through a couple of them before we start commenting on it. But I do think if there's one thing to kind of pause and mention here, it's that for some reason the ARG that the Stockroach has decided to create looks like a text adventure game and acts like a text adventure game, which I just find absurdly fascinating.
It's like, why that genre? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because like text games aren't really big. Like Legend of Zelda was never a text game, right? And also they're just not really around that much anymore. So I wonder what the inspiration is, other than like to like give it the old school feeling that you get in a lot of ARGs.
Yeah, it's got like an analog. Well, but the analog aspects of it are being taken to the extreme, and the background is just ones and zeros. Like, I don't know what that binary string is. Maybe if Trom was here, Trom could tell us. But I think maybe today's a quiet night for us. Although I really appreciate Ash Black being here. It is, yeah. I mean it. It's interesting too because it's a genre that doesn't give as much. Like it is notoriously a genre with a lack of emergence. Everything is pre-programmed. So, yeah, it's bizarre. But I mean, that's not obviously not how, even if that's how it's being conveyed, like that is the structure, it's not how it plays out. And I guess that's kind of where we'll kind of move from there.
But I mean, aren't all games like just text?
Yes, but it's a little, you know, okay.
I know, I'm just being an asshole.
Well, you've done it. You've done it real well. It's going to move pretty fast here, though. These videos are not... There's no fat on these videos. I should pause this here. You can see kind of the early Stockroach ideas before they actually come out as well, which is kind of fun. But it also creates this really interesting vibe, right? Where it's like, up to this point, what has been doxed to us is often Jeremy's personal life, not the Stockroach plans. But now that he's a layer deeper in the narrative, like there's an embedded text going on, now we're getting the Stockroach stuff being doxed to us. So that's fun, I think. Oh, I forgot to turn on my my overhead light. Give me a moment. I was wondering why I look so pale. So there you go.
What'd that say?
Make music longer.
Oh, can we watch some Markiplier?
We could watch. Hey, we could do a heist with Markiplier one of these days, which is not an ARG, but it is fun. I do like it a lot. Yeah. So in each one of these little sub areas, right? Like, there are actually like comments and replies. Detective Nice is here, who's also a Vehemence member. So you do actually, there is actually some like chatting going on in these videos of like what specific things people want to see done, what things he should do, right? And then what's interesting is that the Stockroach is responding and saying like, I haven't learned the Enchanted Ballad. Maybe I need to look around more, in the way that a text adventure game would tell you, you know, I haven't found these things. And there's some also just incredible things in here. Although I think my favorite is this. I have not yet found a gender pronoun. Maybe I should look around the digital realm some more. Same, Stockroach. Same.
Hello. Come here. Sorry, my
There's
cat.
the cat coming. Fantastic.
Oh, he left. Oh, he's scratching the wall now.
So now he's going to try and do the thing that Detective Nice offered him to do, right? And try to open the chest.
Okay. Sorry.
The hand. It's so good.
The Olden Harvest.
Golden harpist. That's fantastic, man. Maybe I need to turn that up for you quickly so you can hear that, because it is
That
very
sounds like
quiet.
Sorry. That's the bottom four notes of the ocarina and Ocarina of Time, which is the made of water.
He's just using a piano. It's just like, all right, well, I guess that technically counts as a string instrument, right? So, good enough. And then people said, oh, you should play the harp near the obelisk. And then somebody said, oh, I'll try that. And he says, oh, I'll try that tomorrow, you know? But you'll notice also that the commenters have taken to now capitalizing keywords in the way that he does in his responses in the first one. So there's some learning going on there. I know we're blazing through this, but I think it works best as one big kind of dump.
I agree. Oh God.
It's really good. I should have clipped that for the GIF.
That's our next clip.
God, I can't imagine juggling all of these windows. I wonder, we'll have to ask if all this was done in post or if it was done like as a live performance.
TTYL.
So yeah, he does the digital lake thing, and then there, you know, again, we have the same sort of stuff, more keywords, more saying, hey, go do this. Then we get stockario5.mp4. I kind of always feel whenever we do this that I'm doing the same thing he is and trying to juggle all these windows.
Very meta.
Yeah, look at that callback.
That's awesome.
I feel very validated watching this now instead of earlier. You think we should ask him to do the Stockario Roaches voice on stream? Because I
can do it.
It's so good. It's so good, man. Oh my god. Yeah, so he travels to the bottom of the lake and then he finds this. And we had a huge increase in the benefit and the sound too. Recognize some of these tracks from the opening of our streams because I was using his Bandcamp for a while. So yes, this does happen while his computer is broken. This is so fucking brilliant, man. This is one moment. Dogs do know a lot of things humans don't know. I think that's probably true.
That is true.
I would put that on my grave. I would believe that. That'll be the little like quote underneath any Stockroach paper, or if I do, I have to do a Stockroach blog post at some point. It has to happen. Whenever I get back to doing blog posts and not screaming.
Whenever anybody else does.
So yeah, I mean, I love the phone thing because it like takes and recontextualizes that notification sound that was accidental in previous recordings because somebody else was in the room or somebody texted him into this like intensely personal and direct and important part of the plot. I love this. Like, I think you can tell the direction I go with looking at this stuff, but we'll watch the last one and then we'll have a conversation about the whole thing up to the final episode. So here we go. Here's the last one before the finale of Stockario Roaches. Champ's voice is incredible too. Oh, Oh, that honestly, the trot looks pretty good too. Like I feel like he gets a lot better at animation as this process goes on.
Champ, speak. Speak. Good boy.
I'll play
Oh,
all that back for you just in case you missed it.
I heard it.
Awesome.
So cute.
I think I'm good to keep this one maxed. Sometimes the music can get loud and peak our audio levels. The necks. This track is a ball. Let's gonna do a little dance here while we do this. Why not, right? The audience can see us, so.
Ooh, did he do an AMA?
I think it did. I think it's on the Stockroach Reddit, though. I hopefully put the link in the description because I'm definitely not going to type all that out. Yes, he did put a link in the description, so I'm good. All right, I'll open up here. Yeah, so here is the AMA. It's not a long AMA, but it is there. Before we get into that, I do want to like take a hot moment and just talk about this whole thing. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the ARG and an ARG?
So, again, just so I can make sure I know this correctly, so I can talk about it correctly.
Sure.
This is an ARG that Stockroach like in the narrative of Stockroach, the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Stockroach himself, the guy who's being Stockroach,
Mm-hmm.
claims that he found this
Mm-hmm.
ARG about him.
Well, is it about
Okay, so he doesn't say it's about
Stockroach?
him.
No, of course not. Right? Like,
Okay.
No. I mean, obviously, right? Like there are resonances that are super important, but like, and we can both.
But what Stockroach, the character, claims is that he just found this.
Yeah, it just happens to be a good ARG for you to invest in if you're thinking about investing in the ARG economy.
Gotcha.
And obviously, like it's really important for a lot of reasons. Although maybe it feels like superfluous content right now. I think the thing I wanted to raise with you is like, okay, so what is this? Like what are we really looking at here? If we were look at this as its own text, not as an embedded text, it's an embedded ARG. It is doing certain things. The little peaks behind the blinders mess with the narrative levels, right? So that's all par for the course for us. But like if we look at this as its own thing, like what would you call this?
I mean, it's right. So you have very different genres happening, all at the same time. I wouldn't call it an ARG though.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't either.
I think that's like the one genre, or one of the genres that is not engaging or forms.
Right.
I would say, right, it's more of a video series that tries to engage its viewership by asking them questions.
Yeah, it's kind of like
But there's
those.
still it's still just like, there's still a narrative devised outside of the audience, but they're like just directly soliciting audience participation, which is something that's been happening since like radio and newspapers and all that stuff, right? So
Mhm.
I think it follows that trajectory of like narrative.
As Ash would say, what are you talking about? There's clearly binary.
Right, but Sherlock Holmes was in magazines, right?
Yeah.
They'd be like, "What do you think's gonna happen? Who do you think's the killer?" Right? And they would have people like send in letters to the magazine, right? Or to the periodical.
Mhm.
Um, and so this is kind of drawing on that lineage of narrative that is predetermined, right? But it's soliciting audience interaction in a way that makes it appear like the audience is having some kind of effect on the narrative. Even though obviously, right, we know that it doesn't. So I would say it's using the trappings of video games, text video games, right?
Mhm.
But what it essentially is a video series,
Right. And
video
that's
narrative.
kind of where I land. I think about like the choose your own adventures that were popular on YouTube, a decade ago before they got rid of the video reply
Mm,
options,
yeah,
right? Or
yeah.
or those sorts of things before those affordances were not part of YouTube anymore. And there is something of that kind of thing going on here. It's just that, once you make the choices in the comments, the next video gets made as opposed to there being several videos that tell you different directions. There's one correct direction to go as
Yeah.
opposed to many. I think what's interesting to me is looking at this as kind of remix culture, right? Where like suddenly now like the harp is marked with the PlayStation buttons. The Stockario looks like, I don't know, he looks like a 90s Link, like a 90s action or an 80s action TV Link.
Yeah.
There's like other bits and bobs that are very like obviously ripped from video games, especially other video games, other contexts for video games. And it's really, I think a video is coming through on your side.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I'm like looking around. Sorry. I'm getting
No, it's fine.
distracted.
Yeah, be distracted. Whatever. This is just be distractible. Whatever. It's interesting to me because I don't like. It's a remixed text in terms that it's pulling stuff from outside culture and recombining the elements into something that's new. But it's also like a remix of the elements that we've seen in Stockroach up to this point, right? Like, it's not quite the same as the last time we saw Magisteria, but it is Magisteria. There's callbacks to the octopus. There's callbacks to like the phone notifications. All of these things are being recontextualized. During his descent, he talks about Michael, the bully, and gives us the insight that Michael's like parents divorced, and that's when he started getting mean. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I think that's really the part of it that makes this part so compelling for me, is that it is attempting to be an ARG, definitely not being that, but it's recombining so many of these elements that we've passed through, that there's almost like a nostalgic quality to it for me. I don't know how you feel about it.
And see, for me, I think it's more about like how it's just like slippages of the character. Right? It's like it's less about like for me, and again, because I'm not an ARG person, right? That my approach to it might be different, conceptually, right? But it seems more of like the purpose of this, I think, is to show how even in his creative endeavors where he is not a character, it's still what it's all about is him,
Right.
right? And like that's a very teenager-y thing. Where your thinly veiled narrative worlds that you create are just about you, right?
Yeah.
And the experiences and the things that you're dealing with. So I
Yeah.
think that's part of what this is pointing to for me, is it's providing more context about the character,
Yeah,
right?
and
Yeah.
I think doing so in a way, and this is why I thought maybe you would be a really cool person to talk to about this, because the like compelling, and certainly that's like a huge part of this as well, and I think it feels almost like fan labor to me, like almost, like an early fan fiction somebody would write in high school or something, It's got some of those, like, it's clearly not fan labor, right? But like,
Yeah.
the feeling of I'm going to express myself through the recombination of these existing things and make it still about myself, make it still kind of memoir in some places, feels similar, I think.
Yeah, definitely, right? But in this, right, the centralized object, right?
Mhm.
Is not the fan object. I mean, it's definitely part of it, though, right? I think you're pointing to remix culture. I think is an apt one, right? I would say it's more of that than a fan labor,
Yeah.
um, right? But it's also just like a kid being like, I like this game series, so I'm gonna like try to imitate it, kind of,
Yeah.
right? You're right. So it's interesting.
And
It's
we've said all this
interesting that
without. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, right. It's interesting that the character doesn't understand what an ARG is, right? Which we can obviously tell because the construction of it is not ARG like at all.
Right.
It might point to the ways that other genres and other mediums have incorporated some audience participation
Mhm.
in some ways, right? But that's a different setup than what an ARG does. So I think it's interesting, right, that the audience participation part is the only part that comes over, right, in this character, in this person's mind. Um, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying,
No, but it makes
but
sense.
that's the part that's sticking out to me.
It's participatory for sure, and it's like trying to be very, very deliberately. Like the story doesn't progress unless somebody comments. It may be linear, but the participation's important. Like the interactivity is important, and that's clearly been conferred onto Jeremy, the character. And like the other thing it's really kind of interesting is he spent enough time crawling Reddit to note things like, oh, when people promote their ARG, they say it's not theirs. They say they found it. Or, oh, when people like make an ARG, as Ash Black pointed out, they put binary in it, And even though it's acting as the setting here, which makes a lot of sense for it being like a digital world, like there's also a conversation to be had about the fact that this is his conception of the digital world, Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and oh man, it's like some 90s shit, and I love it. This would be right at home on like Disney Channel in the 90s. I guess Disney XD didn't exist then, but if Disney XD did, then like, yeah. But
Short Circuit, War Games,
yeah.
that.
Oh, War Games. Yeah, it's got kind of a War Games vibe to it in certain respects. But yeah, there's enough like knowledge of the setups, like the markers of the genre for him to kind of recompile them, but they're not in the right order to actually be like the generic markers we know them as.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It is worth also saying that the bulging muscles are probably a Dragon Ball thing, all things considered. It's just great. It's all great. Like, oh man, yeah. I think like the first time I watched through this ARG, Stockroach ARG didn't impress me very much. I was like, I don't really care about this part of the piece until I got to the last video, and then I was like, oh no, I should have cared about this the whole time. And now that I've watched it once and I've gone back and re-engaged with it, this feels like way more important to me than the main series even does sometimes. Like, I think also, the story that's being told in Stockroach ARG is like a very streamlined rendition of the developments we're seeing Jeremy go through in the main game, Like, yeah, like, oh, I have to go save this person. I don't know what's going to happen when I get far enough into this that I have to confront this thing I can't remember. But it feels really important, and I have to keep moving towards it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of the format and the pacing, he feels less resistant to do it via art than he does through actually like living.
Yeah, it's interesting to think, right, how something can be fictional but biographical at the same time, or autobiographical at the same time. Right? I think that's another part of this too, where you have the very complex layering of digital autobiography online too, right? Because the idea that you could somehow understand a person by the pretenses they put up on the internet is also another big thing that I think ARGs actually operate within. But I think this kind of brings it to the fore a little more.
Yeah, it's on some level like the illusion that we can understand things by like the things they post is kind of essential to character building in these spaces. Just kind of, I've never thought about that, but it is very true that like without that assumption, without that like that simulated co-presence, if you will, between those two individuals, the game, like, you wouldn't be able to build a character in that would seem at all believable, you know? But I mean, that doesn't necessarily make it particularly distinct from other forms of representation, you know, like you read a book and characters feel believable even though you can't see them interact with them. Some people feel like they know the characters from reading like a whole series or something. But it is different, I think, in the realm of the digital, because it's highlighted so acutely the amount of parasociality that exists in our culture, like all the time. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Right. So like the ARG, and this one I think is clearly amongst all of them. I think it almost works with the operates, if you want to call it the ghost in the machine, right? That somebody like Donna Haraway would argue it's always been there. If you would have read my essay that I sent you.
I did.
I'm
I
kidding.
am
I'm
reading
just
it
kidding.
right now, actually.
No, you're
Cyborg
literally fine.
Manifesto for people in the chat. It's that Cyborg Manifesto stuff.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. The only reason I make fun of you is because I already like re-looked at it and
Of course
submitted
you
it.
did.
So
Of course you
no
did.
worries to work at it. Right, but the idea of of how humanity, right, on the digital, there was these ideas of utopianism of nobody, you can be anyone you want on the internet, as both a utopian thing, and then of course it turns into a dystopian thing. You can be anything you want on the internet is right, that tenuous relationship. I think it's also part of the 1990s cyberculture that a lot of these ARGs are drawing on. And I think that's something that a lot of these ARGs are trying to figure out is what's the difference between truth and reality and something falsified on the digital era, in the digital era. Of course, we can say, phenomenologically, right, there is no such, like, even though the event occurs, right, there is no such thing as truth, big T truth, of all time, whatever. Right, or ontologically, we can say there is no real like origin to what truth is. But regarding like taking out philosophy, right, and just thinking about the discourses of truth and lies on the internet, right, I think it's also engaging in those things. This one in particular is doing it through the narrative of the character, right, the character at the center. But we also see things like the spooky one we did before that was kind of like Scooby-Doo, I forget what it's
Paranormal
called,
Paranoids, yes.
right? But we also know, oh, this one character, he's the one who seems sketchy, right? The only way we as internet people, digital citizens, however we want to describe it, the only way we can identify this person as spooky is through their actions in a 10-minute video. But because we trust the ARG to deliver us information in a way that's easily digestible across multiple modes and sites, we as players of the game take it as truth. Just how we would if we were reading a book, right? So say we were reading a book, right? And we were like, the paranormals, it was a book series instead,
Sure.
right, about how she found these old videotapes and she was looking at them. We would trust our narrator when she says, oh, this guy seems creepy,
Right.
And in the same way we trust the ARG, but rather than the narrator deliberately telling us that, they're showing us that through audiovisual media. But of the game, we still trust in that truth in the online environment, right? And so even in something like that, it takes the assumption of the audience for the, if we want to talk about Jocelyn's work, the archive of an ARG, we have to be able to trust the chronology of the archive.
Yeah.
And people who are creating the archive to not lead us astray.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, right, I think this is partly why ARGs, I think, can be super fascinating along multiple, right, not just in playful mechanics, but also in discourses of truth and reality online, and the layers that it unravels of how nothing can be true online, right, but it can only be posited as true, which I would argue is the same thing in real life.
Yeah.
But that's another thing.
Well, and there's also like
what
I'm acting more often than not in these streams as your archivist, right? Or as you and Morgan's archivist. I'm the person who's like, oh, I know what direction we need to go to get through this and what I think is the best order to discuss it. So like you guys have to trust me that like I actually know what I'm fucking talking about. And chat will tell me when I'm wrong, which is nice, because they're the real people, the real archivists, the real fans are in chat. That being said, I do think that there is an interesting, a lot of these games, were I just playing on my own, I could play without an archive. I have to, there's the archive that's created because, by the platforms themselves that these things are being posted on, right? There's the kind of distributed network of text being placed there that are gonna stay there and they're gonna be maintained by the creator, which is not the same as an archive, but it is kind of archive adjacent. And then there's the actual archives that are generated by fans as they chart these things. I never know where to go with this thought, but it comes up every time we do the show that technically speaking, you wouldn't need an archive to navigate the text, but having an archive, having a comprehensive progress document dramatically changes the amount of information and the way that you peruse a text meaningfully, especially if they're like hard puzzles that without the help of the archive would be substantially more difficult to try and tackle on your own or try to tackle with a group of friends, And then there are ARGs where you would need an archive, or you would at least need more than one person. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. All ARGs should require, on some level, more than one person to really get their meaning and get into their sorts of things. Because people miss shit, mainly, I think. It's kind of a floating distinction. But, like, all these things are relative. But, yeah, I mean, it's how should I say... The community aspects, when the community like takes the history that they've developed and writes it down, and then new players are introduced to that instead of simply moving through the piece, there's a huge difference that's encountered by those new players versus the old players. And I don't know what to do with that, but it is fascinating and I think feeds directly into what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
Right. And I think part of the strength of that is that the historical moment, right, that ARGs are being created in is something that is conducive to that conversation, right? Or the ARG is, if we want to use, which will criticize the network as a metaphor, right? But we could say ARGs are on a node or are partly, a node in a nodal network of all of these conversations and discourses about all of that stuff, right? About all of that. And I particularly the fact that horror ARGs are the most popular points to, I mean,
At this point, yeah.
a whole other thing, right? We could talk about real true crime, right? We could talk about all of this stuff, but that would take us far afield of this.
We could have a whole stream where we just talk about the trends as well, because there's a trend in weird fiction that I think is coming up now that is a little bit different than the horror stuff, but it is like slowly emerging as a really popular thread to start making these things on. I do want to grab Ash Black's comment here, where Ash Black says, there are so many ARGs that while I enjoy stumbling around them myself, the ones I'm really deeply understand, the ones I've experienced through docs or videos. And it's like, yeah. There's the Juduzable wiki, which we will be using out the ass for the Juduzable coverage we're going to do after this, is so important for understanding character relationships when things happened. If you have a question about one of the videos, looking at the transcripts. But I mean, like, and Circle's really good at making sure vandalization doesn't happen on the wiki, but vandalized wiki means suddenly all that is interrupted. Shall we continue? Also, hello, Mediocre. Welcome. And thank you for the compliment. I deeply appreciate it. Do we want to continue forward, David, do you think?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Sweet. Let's keep rolling. So we do have the Stockaria Roachus YouTube sensation AMA, where he says this is all out of character. I do think it's funny that he calls it a metaverse, because I think, like, in kind of a hilarious way. Maybe it is one of the more accurate usages of the term metaverse. But enough of that. I don't want to get on that thread. Then we'll spend a whole hour with me bitching about metaverse. Hi, Magisterians. As you undoubtedly know by now, Stockroach ARG and the Digital Realm ARG will be wrapping up soon. As I prepare for the final installment, I wanted to take a minute to say a few things to the amazing fan base who has been there from day one. First of all, thank you for your support and participation. Your support and participation has been one of the highlights of building this lush and richly detailed world. Second of all, I will not be diverging the contents of the season finale of Stockroach ARG and the Digital Lake. All I can tell you is it's going to be action-packed, emotional, and 1+ hours long. You what? Holy
Sorry.
shit.
1+ hours long. Sorry, I got distracted by chat because Mediocre Bottle is talking some amazing things, and I want to make sure you heard my plan for your paper for Jocelyn's class.
My plan for my paper for Jocelyn's class.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a media historiography class together this semester. So whenever we say Jocelyn's class, we mean the media historiography class. We've been learning a lot about
a big
archival.
part of what we're talking about is archive stuff.
Yeah.
Mediocre Bottle says, me, a documenter, there's a whole other level of understanding when you're documenting the ARG itself or reading through someone else's documentation, TBH. I've recently learned that I actually have a great time going through and analyzing after the fact when the game is over. You can't beat the rush of new content drop and running through it, but sometimes things go missed when you're on an adrenaline rush instead of looking at the content.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my feel.
Some immediacy stuff going on there. there's some fun.
And Wren, since you know people that construct archives for ARGs, I was like, you can do some awesome work about archiving and ARGs and digital archival work.
Well, I want to. It's kind of like one of my little, once I finish the main stuff I'm working on, the other thing I really want to do is try and like facilitate and figure out like what does a really good ARG archive really look like for multiple games. And that's a really difficult question because ARGs deal with so many different mediums that attempting to try and document them all can be really fucking difficult. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if now you're making me want to do convince Jocelyn that I should do like a series of small interviews and just, or like, and compile that into a paper. God dang it. David, stop giving me good ideas. Yeah, library and archival science is a thing, and everybody I've met with a library science degree fucking rocks. I'm just saying.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And I think because what we do so much is philosophical, it might be interesting to think of how ARG documenters consider their own work, because ARGs are so inherently thought of as digitally mediated.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, it's not even that you're producing an archive of found work, but you're producing an archive of the explicit directive to let people play this game. But because it is this multimodal experience, it's sometimes less about, but at the same time it's hard, right? Because if you're amassing materials that you yourself are creating, that's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, and that there are I think some cases of that as well, right? Where we are suddenly now talking about like ARG, because technically speaking, a lot of ARGs, I shouldn't say a lot, a non-zero amount of them will creators will put plants in communities so they can actually watch the emergence that the community doesn't choose to step forward with, and kind of plot around that as well. And there's every opportunity for a creator to just pop into one of these documents and edit a few things here and there as one of their plugs. Do I know of any particular instances where that's happened? Not at all. Is it technically possible and therefore something somebody who is a creator could go out and do tomorrow? Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
So, there's the possibility the creator is one of the documenters and is in fact arguing with other players as they're going through these things. I don't know. There you go. Look, Ash Black has done that. Spot on. I'd love to hear about that experience because it's absolutely fascinating. Maybe if we do Cafe and Diner on here, we can have you on and talk about some of that stuff too. I don't know if a Cafe and Diner should be on our list of stuff to check out. I am really kind of brought on by it. It's really cool. Important part of the ARG archival means producing a roadmap or an alternate trailhead so that people can go to the game themselves. Yeah, so it's funny. I don't know if there's a term for that yet. Maybe we, the community of Vehement, should make a term and then like pioneer that. But because it does seem like it's different than a standard trailhead, but it is actually an important distinction to make as far as people who get invested through the archive instead of people who get invested through the actual instance of the actual trailhead. It's almost like instead of being a trailhead that somebody's blazing, it's almost like it is like a trail marker or something that people go down. I don't know how to extend the metaphor, but I've always been a fan of like the camping, hiking ARG metaphors. I think they're fun. Of course, I also like Deserto. So,
you could literally think of it as blazing a trail then.
Yeah.
Right? It's like if you're the person that is going up the mountain of the ARG by amassing and creating these documentations of the path, it's basically like you're blazing the trail for people to be able to get up to the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm. Ash Black also posts, I changed the order of the Princes of Hell from my ARG all the time. Is it important? No, but I like seeing them in order. Oh man, I feel like if we ever, like, this show ever got enough fucking viewers that we had like a wiki or something, I'd go in and edit our wiki just to put things in the order that I wanted them in, because I'm also anal like that. There's the Super Beer Bros wiki, so it's not with enough viewership, it's not impossible. Oh man. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and push us back into Stockroach, but I also love the old lady's metaphor that Mediocre's throwing. So pushing back into this, third of all, I'll be answering questions relating to the series tomorrow at 8 p.m. after I finish checking my investment portfolio. I will not be answering personal questions as age, name, gender, or other YouTube channels I may be affiliated with. And pretty much the only thing that was said, I think, was this, an hour long. Oh my God, that's amazing. It feels like somebody with loads of money would do. Consider me hype. Yeah. And then there's, not sure if you're aware, but the Stockroach showed immense support for your ARG. Very, very deserved. There's really not much else here, I think. I think that there's also this, which may also be part of the AMA. This might all be part of the AMA. Who would want to hack you, right? And I think this is at the point where he's having trouble with the YouTube account, right? Like he's getting that the copyright strike happening as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Disney. It's coming.
Oh wait, maybe not. Maybe this is. Hold on, let me check the timeline here, because that might. No, I think it is. I think it is the Disney thing. Unless chat corrects me. Yeah. So the AMA kind of gets canceled for this. Except there are a few questions here, right? Did Stockroach just have a really big budget? The budget for Stockroach was huge in terms of imagination. I was going to spend it all, and I was going to spend it all in 1 hour, but I don't know now. My budget in terms of imagination is also massive. And it has, they would know how to recover a password. So yeah, AMA doesn't go anywhere. Probably not terribly surprising. How do you think Stockroach just compares to the Garfield ARG? I wonder who could have posted this. Anyway, it's great. I love Stockroach. I'm glad we got to go through it. And we can pick back up actually on the main trail of Stockroach now. He makes a second account. The AMA is posted by one account, so the comments are from another. Both Stockroach. That's ridiculous. Holy shit. I love him.
It's a lasagna feast of content.
A lasagna feast
and
of
meta.
content. My meta lasagna. My lasagna. I'm going to die on that hill. That's the joke I'm making today. All right. So now we're going to watch the Money Grub Birthday Club, and we're going to go into like the new era of ARG, of interactivity with Stockroach these days.
Hulu ad manager.
Thanks, Hulu. Really appreciate the ads. I really got to get an ad blocker while I do this. I keep saying that every
Money
time.
Grubs and gentlemen. Today's episode of the Stockroach is brought to you by Apple Computers, who somehow downloaded all of my old files onto my new computer. I don't know how they did that. And honestly, there was a lot of files that I kind of hoped would not be downloaded because I've been trying to delete them for a really long time.
Oh no.
But they even downloaded into the same exact spots on my desktop where they were before, which is a little freaky. But irregardlessly, I want to say thank you.
I will give it that.
To Jeff Bezos
Regardless
for designing
of
a
whether it's
really
Stockroach or not. That
powerful
sort of shit's
computer.
Terrifying.
And I look forward to working with you soon, Jeff. Give me a call. Give me a call literally anytime. You have my number because you built my phone. But what I actually wanted to talk about today for this episode is that I wanted to talk about that the Money Grub Birthday Club
Oh, that word art. It
has
hits so
officially
good.
completed the final phase of beta testing and is now available for signups on the Stockroach store. Let me just fix this real quick, actually.
Is that your cat?
No, that was in the video.
Oh my
the
god, that's
Stockroach
his
store.
cat.
I'm
Oh
on-
my
I'm on push
god.
to talk right now.
Let me hop over to the video so I can make sure that we're not missing anything search-wise. Doesn't look like we are.
So the Money Grub Birthday Club is...
I should pause now for anybody who is not participating in the Stockroach ARG or is watching the VOD. You can no longer sign up for the Money Grub Birthday Club. There are ways to support Stockroach, but this isn't one of them right now.
a system wherein vis-a-vis a birthday surprise will be hand-delivered to you on your birthday by the mailman or woman,
by the
if you have
Stockroach.
a female mailman or woman, with whom I have no affiliation heretofore whatsoever. But it costs $1 to sign up, plus shipping and handling. But the birthday surprise that you receive is worth much more than, well, technically it's just worth $1 legally, but it's also, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I worked really hard on it, and emotionally speaking, it is valuated at much higher than the $1 that you spend plus shipping and handling.
If I had played this thing live, I would have signed up for this in a heartbeat.
To enter the club, please enter the following link into your Internet Explorer of choice. It is stockroach.b.
Can we just appreciate here also that the tab over here, A is for amazing, S is for so good at fashion, is almost certainly an acrostic poem of the name Ashley. I love it.
Rotted.
I'm going to make you an acrostic poem, David. It's going to start with D is for does cool streams. A is for almost famous. I'm going to keep... All right, I'm going to stop before you hang up. Yeah, sorry, Chaos. I'm starting acrostics for iPads instead of meme posters. Go for it, but only do it in Word, like shitty fan art. Oh, word art. Oh my God. What? I think David left the call. David, are you there? We've switched positions. For a second, I was player 2 and you were player 1.
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to leave the chat like as a joke. I hit the wrong button.
Ah, it's fine. Everybody just saw how Streamlabs freaks out whenever you do cropping though, so that's fun.
Whoopsie.
As in Bandcamp. A as in and camp.
And camp.
N as in naked.
Jesus Christ.
You know, it's probably easier if you just copy and paste this. Actually, here, I'll copy it for you. So all you actually have to do is hit paste, which if you are on a Mac, I believe
I'm so
is
glad that he
Control
copied
P.
it for us.
That is P as in Bandcamp. Oh, and Stockadoodledoo.
I write a lot of essays for
Grammarly.
Yeah, Grammarly comes up all the time because, the computer's listening to me and hears that I teach English and then feeds me a bunch of things about essay writing. So we'll watch the Birthday Club sign up tutorial, and then we'll talk about, I'll show you the Birthday Club treehouse. It's a real place. It's kind of amazing. I don't, again, Mediocre probably could tell me if the Birthday Club treehouse came out at the same time as the Birthday Club sign up. I assume that it did, but I don't actually know. But yes, here we go. Okay, I thought so. Thank you for checking. I appreciate it. Detective Nice got it first. Okay, well, thank you as usual, Detective Nice, for being awesome. What is your favorite animal, David?
My favorite animal?
Mm-hmm.
It's either an owl or a fox.
Fair. Very good choices.
I like smart thinking animals.
Fair enough. Is your cat smart? I don't actually know.
He's not smart, but he's not dumb.
He's not smart, but he's not dumb. Excellent. All right, so now we're gonna flip over here. So here's the Money Grub Birthday Club actual page, by the way. Like I said, it's sold out. You can no longer participate in the Money Grub Birthday Club. But you can see some of these images of something that is coming. And then when you get to this, eventually, I don't know how this was delivered, but the Money Grub Birthday Club treehouse.neocities.org does exist, and we are going to explore it now as friends and as show people. And I'm going to put it in chat so that if anybody wants to check out the Money Grub Birthday Club, they sure can. So you have to click on each one of these independently to get up to the birthday club, and each one of these is a separate web page. I don't actually know what happens if you hit 7. If you just type that in, yeah, okay, there's no page 7. And if we just decide we don't want to be a part of the oh, that's cute, that's fantastic, that's awesome, Mediocre. If we want to like go over here, if you highlight over, the alt text is "that's okay, no pressure." If you hear it says "we're so excited to see you," which is adorable. But yeah, no, if you click this, it does actually take you to Bing.com, but it takes you to I love Stockroach Bing.com, which does actually cause Stockroach videos to pop up, which is pretty great. And also apparently I love eating cockroaches, which is not something I want to look at. Also,
well, Wren knows about my experiences with searching for Bing in Serious Play, so I don't trust anything.
Yeah, you found some weird things when you search Serious Play in Bing. I don't know if we can recommend that to the audience.
No.
I didn't know that Bing
That
had
is
a
not
university
appropriate.
thing, but you know, there you go. Oh my god. All right, so yeah, if we I gotta go back to the Money Grub Birthday Club. I've kind of fucked this up now. Hold on, let me quickly, well, now it's fucked up. Well, it's a good thing I copied it into chat, isn't it? Because I think it's just paste. There it is. All right. So now we have to climb back up the stairs, but that's all right. We can do it really fast. And here we are. And then we want to go inside. And here is the inside of the Money Grub Birthday Club. And we can go back outside if we want. Yeah, this is very like, it feels like an early 2000s like site you can check out.
Yes.
What do you want to look at first?
Go to like PBS Kids Go, and you can like go to Arthur's, like whatever.
Yeah. Do you anything you want to look at first? Anything in the room?
Let's look at the computer first.
Sure. All right, the computer. How are the stocks today? At Bing. Well, it does appear the stocks are stocking. The Nasdaq's down, the S&P is down, but the Dow's up. So there you go. You learned about the stocks. What's next, David?
The books.
All right. This takes us to the library. Click here to go back to the party, but no bots. You have to be able. Everybody, can we get a library in chat? Oh man. So yeah, the library is currently under construction. It'll be full of epic tales. If you'd like to submit a story or a poem, please email Stockroach Official. with the following password in the subject. So if you would like to submit I don't know if this would actually work now. I mean, you could try, but you could submit something to the library if you wanted, I guess. Chat, I don't know. Has anybody successfully submitted anything to the library? Is it like a thing that has happened? Anyway, we should look at these stories. So there's The Wish, which is a story by Kevin Y., and then Money, which is a poem by Goat Whispers. And the money poem is short, so we'll start there. M is for money. O is for, oh yeah, more money. N is for never gonna stop loving money. E is for egad, how I love money. Y is for, yes, I am as lonely as I seem.
Ugh. My new favorite phrase is saying the quiet part out loud.
Say the quiet part out.
That's my new phrase. I don't know where it came from, but that's what that poem's doing.
That is absolutely what that poem is doing. And then
Hey,
there's The Wish.
Tromboomer Knuckles is here.
Hey, Trom's here. Fantastic. So yeah, now we have to read The Wish by Kevin Y. So I will read this out loud for the chat. I don't know if there's like voices in here. If there's dialogue, then we can swap off or something. But yeah. Anyway. By the time he reached old age, his mind was overflowing with so many false or incomplete memories that it was unreasonable to believe that the encounter with the genie had ever really happened. His hand would settle on an empty hook where he could have sworn he left his keys the night before. Wow, I can't read today. Or he would crack open a book he knew he had read to find a cast of unfamiliar characters. He would think back to how he and his wife used to argue good-naturedly about the details of some movie they had both watched in childhood, only to find a copy, put it on, and laugh at how wrong they had both been with their recollections. And then he would wonder if those moments themselves had ever happened, or if his mind was scrambling old puzzle pieces into new material as it sought to keep the memory of his late partner alive. But this time in his life, by this time in his life, he was no longer bothered by the notion they didn't live in quite the same world he remembered growing up in. It didn't surprise him when the name on the tip of his tongue turned out to not be the name of the acquaintance he was talking to, or when a familiar face actually belonged to a stranger. And yet, no matter how he tried, he could never bring himself to doubt the memory of the beach, the moonlight, the sand-encrusted lamp, and his one wish was wholly and completely factual. Decades ago, he had accepted that his wish would be granted in a way that was different than he had envisioned. He realized this not long after his 26th birthday, on a day when he looked in the bathroom mirror and saw a crease on his forehead that hadn't been there before. The crease, the investigation that followed, led him to notice a number of changes to his face and body, changes that crept up slowly enough that he hadn't noticed them happening, but now that he was looking at them, marked unmistakably the time that had passed since that night on the beach. Well, he thought then, it wasn't agelessness that I wished for, not exactly. At the time, this realization aroused in him a note of resentment, but over the ensuing decades, he had begun to believe that the genie had his best interest in mind in interpreting the words in such a narrow sense. It wasn't long before he fell in love, and the passage of time suddenly seemed less of an enemy. The seasons and cycles of life became newly something to revel in, as he watched his partner change and grow, and changed and grew beside her. He would sometimes feel a pang of giddy relief when he let his mind drift to what an ageless life would have been like. This isolation, the suspicion, the disbelief, and demands for explanation. Over decades, they grew old together and had many friends. They were happy. He was happy, aside from the occasional twinge of guilt that would prickle the base of his spine, usually late at night, to think of the people he would inevitably outlive one by one. Losing his wife made no easier the fact of how many friends he had already lost in the twilight years of their life together. She died expecting that he would follow soon, ignorant of his secret. It was better this way, he was certain of it, and he found himself wishing for just one person, one confidant who would listen with an open mind to his predicament and offer, if not answers, then at least sympathy and belief. In a now empty house in which to spend innumerable days, he set about the lonely business of figuring out what exactly to do with all this time. He still believed, as he had when he made the wish, that age brought wisdom, although he noticed that age made thoughts harder to grasp, and whatever wisdom was becoming more and more difficult to make sense of. Playing any kind of leadership role in his community was out of question, for as was the endless traveling and adventuring he envisioned when he was younger. Alone in his house, he would think himself in circles until his drooping eyelids would cause him to glance at the clock and take note of the late hour. Oh well, he would think, I'll have to figure it out later. I've certainly got time. He would laugh breathfully at this private joke and shuffle off to bed the next day, and the next, and the next he assumed would offer the same promise. It was with some surprise, then, that he found himself one afternoon flailing for a telephone and grasping for breath in his kitchen. Whatever this was couldn't possibly be light-threatening, that much he knew. Nonetheless, he thought it best to let an expert ascertain exactly what was happening, so he dialed the phone, the 3 numbers he had never imagined he would need for himself, and then dropped the receiver to dangle from its cord as he collapsed onto the floor. Time had long ago stopped moving at a predictable place, but he found it even more difficult than usual to guess as he lay on the floor, flirting with unconsciousness, whether it had been seconds, minutes, or hours. After some length of time, he heard a knock, a chime, and finally a crash as the door was kicked in and a small team made their way into his home. He felt hands and machinery on his skin and clothes, heard a rustle of uniforms, the beeping and whirring of equipment, hushed and urgent conversations, and what he thought were the words, "We're losing him." For the first time in his unnaturally long life, he felt in his heart the cold grip of doubt. Had he really walked alone on the beach at night, stubbing his toe on the metal lamp and inadvertently shaking through the spirit imprisoned there? Come to think of it, he had no memory of how or why he came to be walking on a beach at all that night, and he remembered in perfect detail the damp grit of sand, the symphony of smoke and colors, the dusky voice of the genie offering him one wish. He knew the memory was true because it was so far beyond the scope of his imagining. His brain made things up all the time. He remembered keys where they had never been affixed names to faces he had never met, but nothing like this. Never anything like this. How could something so impossible have been invented by such a banal mind, or so banal a mind? Eyes closed, barely breathing, he ruminated over possible explanations. Perhaps there was an unintended meaning behind the words he had spoken to the genie. Perhaps he had forgotten some caveat in their agreement and broken the spell long ago. Or maybe the genie had granted him that yes, he could live forever, but it hadn't meant his body, but some other aspect, something beyond the realm of the physical that wouldn't be subject to the same laws. And as he thought this, his heart stopped breathing and he flew out of his body to stretch wider and longer than he could imagine. The first sensation was the cool wetness of large, still bodies of water, then the patter of nearby rushing streams and rivers and waterfalls. Next came the tickle of grass and earth blown from side to side by the wind. All across him, creatures were walking and crawling and swimming and falling asleep and calling to one another and breathing their first or final breaths in decay and feeding one another as the plates of him rocked and slid, occasionally collided to bring down towering structures and open canyons and birth mountains. And as he reached back in his memory, he discovered he had always been this continent, but that this knowledge had been somehow blocked from view in the tiny corner of land where he had lived and died. He exhaled smoke and rocks and lava, and over 1,000 years, 10,000 or maybe more, time didn't really work the way it used to. Or maybe it had never really worked in any particular way at all. He felt the oceans blanket him from all sides and fill caverns and canyons he had opened up and wash away the surface of him until, with a last grasp of fire from the tallest and mightiest volcano, he drowned in a flood and awoke to the knowledge that he was an entire planet. He had always been this planet, which now was blue-brown and murky. It was now a blue-brown and murky world where waves lapped at the shores of what had once been towering mountain peaks, and creatures who had only existed in the darkest, deepest corners of him suddenly, or maybe gradually over some length of time or another, came to have free reign to course across his entire surface, some of them swimming as he revolved to stay on his shaded side, while others stayed put near the surface of living over and over through a cycle of decay, or day and night, a day of dusk and night and dawn, until one day an inconceivable flash took him over from the light side to the dark, and in an instant all the water boiled and was gone. God, that was a long sentence. All across him now, other stars were following suit, collapsing on themselves, sometimes in a brilliant flash, becoming now the center of some new spiral, pulling in matter from all sides, careening towards the emptiness in a grand reflexive arc toward the center of him, growing always somehow smaller and more massive, the dust of even his furthest outskirts gathering into bodies which too spun inward until they were swallowed. And in his hunger, he reached across a now empty expanse to devour smaller galaxies, reaching further and further until the unbeatable foe, some body more massive than even himself, crossed an invisible horizon and drew him in weightily to its center, where he succumbed to the welcome crush of non-being and found himself suddenly, or maybe it had always been so, more expansive, stretching and growing in strength as many became few, became one, and even he began to feel the fabric of his infinite edges tingle with their influence and fold inward, taking the everything and the nothing with them toward his hot, dense center. And as the universe collapsed, he flew outward and upward to still greater things. Woo! Didn't know how I was going to do that, but it happened.
That was awesome. That was great.
It's pretty cool.
So do we know if this is the Stockroach character publishing under someone else, or did someone write this and submit this?
Well, Kevin Y, here, I'll let you on a little insider knowledge. Kevin Y is the individual who is listed as the editor on Stockroach's published poems.
Oh.
So this, as I understand it in terms of diegetic levels, is the maker of the series publishing something within his series where he is playing a character that is playing a character that has an ARG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Inception.
Mm-hmm. And it is interesting because of that cascade, right? Well, now suddenly, something like this, although it certainly speaks to some of Stockroach's anxieties, in an interesting way, also becomes this hilarious metaphor of persona, right?
Oh, I love that game.
For
Yeah,
me,
right.
anyway.
Well, and right, again, the online stuff that we kind of ranted about a little while ago. Obviously, all that still holds here. Right, I think something that's interesting then is like the game or the different genre structures that come together to formulate this ARG is just strange, because you have something posing itself as an ARG, which is actually like a video series within the ARG itself, right? So it's like at the different diegetic levels, right? All the
Mm-hmm.
genres are collapsing in on itself as well.
Yeah. And so you're stuck in this weird thing. I mean, certainly like the players exist on some level here. And I don't think the metaphor is, so much to say that, oh, it's just the artist and nothing else, right? But there is like a sense of, I'm sure especially with all these like different levels of narrative that are being presented to us at any given point in time, that the persistence of the artist within all of them is itself kind of, a oneness that is hard to work with, hard to diagnose, hard to draw boundaries on, I think.
Yeah, right. Which is why I think ARGs point to, and you've talked about this before, the inherent meaninglessness, or at least the social construction of genre, is something that ARGs do a very good job of exploding, which video games did a very good job of exploding in the 80s and 90s. Right. But now the ARG is doing that with specifically digital formats, right? Whereas before, video games kind of really exploded audiovisual, and now this is exploding digital.
Yeah, a different medium for a different time. I do like, in spite of some of the moves, I don't think as a writer I would make. I do kind of really like this little thing. I'm not exactly certain how to place it. It feels in some way like maybe something that when we get back to the very end of the story, when we get back to 34 sonnets, will maybe make more sense to me, especially on a second pass. But even now, like this is the best I can do is to talk about metalepsis, right? But I'm not convinced that is necessarily like the intention of this piece in the scope of Stockroach. And I think there's still more secrets to be understood as far as exactly how this nets into everything else.
And that metalepsis is where you deliberately go across the levels, right?
Yes, it's where you deliberately cross between I'm the, you know, the publishing or or to put it in layman's terms, the publishing, the text, the embedded text, whatever else, right? Like moving across the boundaries that we set up between different levels of real within a novel or something else.
So that's like when I see the commercial for. Sorry, this is obviously
Yeah.
not what it is, but I want to make a joke. So this is like when I see the commercial for Spy Kids 3D, and then Charclaw goes through the screen.
But yes, actually, that's a joke, but it's correct. That's the appeal of the 3D, right? It's the character reaching out from the diegetic into the real, like your space, the real space, right? So that is like, is it actually happening? No, it's I don't know how you would classify it as metalepsis, but it definitely like it signals to the viewer that there's a boundary being crossed, and when that happens, that's metalepsis. So, you know, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think there's something going on here with that. Going back to, I wonder again if we can maybe get something into the library. That'd be kind of fun. Maybe I'll try to put something into the library between once I've got caught up on some other stuff. Anyway, anything else in here? Let's keep going through here. Anything else you want to check out?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, I'm gonna keep clicking through the rest of them.
Yep,
We are
whatever you got.
Yeah, welcome to the Stockroach official guest book. Here's me from back when we started covering this.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cute.
I thought it'd be fun. So maybe we can leave. Let's leave a new comment. Actually, David, you want to leave a comment on the guest book now that you've been here? All right, just tell me what you want me to type.
Oh, I want to do one.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. Then just go onto the page and do one. Awesome.
Where's that link again?
I'll resend it in the chat. Here, I'll send you one right to the guest
Wait,
book
I have
too.
it. I have it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah,
So
no, guest books are
climb up
cool.
the ladder too.
I really want like guest books to like be a thing on websites often. It'd be really cool.
Is that's underneath? That's that. Okay.
Yeah, we can also click on napping, like taking a nap by clicking on the bed, and then we get a song from that. And there's also a gramophone, which takes us to a couple tracks at the bottom of the page, where we can, look at any of these. What's really funny, of course, is that all that the gramophone does is scroll the page down. We can just scroll down and see it any time. And if we go up on the balcony, we'll find is the balcony is under construction. But while it's there, we are to imagine the following. As you climb the ladder, the warmth of the treehouse subsides beneath you. The music fades away, and you feel the beginnings of a cool breeze tussling your hair. You emerge from the hatch and are greeted by a blue sky and soft golden sunlight. It is a clear and cool day. Below you, you see miles and miles of forest waiting to be explored. All your friends are in the treehouse. You will return to them soon, but for now, you are happy to be by yourself, wrapped up in the serenity and grandeur of the world below, which is very sweet. I'm also going to leave a serious play comment in the guest book. I'll just say something like, love the library. Having this party. There we go.
My post is so dumb.
Is this your Davey do? Hello, this is a post for the guest book. I promise I'll leave no swears. Thanks. That's cute. I love that.
No,
right.
read the whole thing.
And read the whole thing. Sorry. All right. The treehouse is so spacious. It takes me back to my childhood since now I'm an adult. Very fun. Are you an adult? I don't know if I believe you.
Very meta.
Yeah. Also, we can.
The same thing.
I've hidden one thing from you. You can, of course, click through this threshold and check out all the fan art and other art.
Oh, that's cute.
So this is by T.S. Roach. This one's by an anonymous money grub, which is some fan art. And if you want to send more, we could, you could send some with a drawing in the subject. So that's pretty cool. And there will be more fan art, recorded later, but that's all that's in the Money Grub Birthday Club. So,
right.
All right. So we have, how much time do we have left on the stream?
I was going to say, it's 7 o'clock, and I do kind of need to get going, unfortunately.
All right. Well, that is fine.
I've not had dinner yet, but we can wrap it up and last thoughts.
Yes. So that's Stockario. That's Money Grub Birthday Club. You know, what's really we are like, it looks like there's a lot left, and it'll probably still take us, you know, a few episodes to really get through it. But I promise you, really all that's here is maybe 2 different like moments in the series that are left to describe. There's the Bitcoin stuff, which will be fun. There's which leads into the date. Those are 2 different things. Those are 2 things that are combined. And then there's the end of Stockario Roaches. And once we've done that, I mean, really, the end is in sight. You have seen a lot of Stockroach at this point. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I got distracted by my cat. Oh no, he's
so good.
Hi, buddy.
Look at him.
Paulo, come here. Look.
He's so good. Oh, his big eyes.
Little baby. Oop, wrong way.
So good.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, nothing like to apologize to about cats. Yeah, I mean, we've seen so much of this. It really, like, I remember when we started this and I thought we'd cover it in like 4 or 5 episodes. And it's crazy how different it feels to go through this stuff on stream than it does to go through this stuff on my own, you know? Because I covered all of this on my own in like a night. But you know, maybe this is another little bit, you know, with the archival process, right? Because what we're doing here is not dissimilar to an archival process. If, for instance, the Stockroach channel were to go down and our channel was somehow still up, then like somebody could go through and you know, as long as they didn't mind our mindless banter, could pretty much watch most of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like say, but it feels, something about going through it like this feels more intimate for me than it does when I'm just going through the text and not trying to perform.
Well, yeah, and it's also just more of if we want to think about things critically, I think it just helps to have a conversation about it, you know, more than just one person kind of talking about it. And of course, like having viewers comment and everything is great, but you know, it's also good to have that dialogue.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you know what I can do? I'm gonna write a paper about this. I'm gonna talk about how streaming and talking is like walking and talking.
Hell yeah, that sounds really cool. I would absolutely read that. It turns into a blog post. We will put it up on the thing.
That's gonna turn into the premier article of the SCMS Journal.
Hey, I mean, it's a good article idea, and it's got probably some Desserteau because you're walking. I love Desserteau. It's like he's up there with as far as favorite theorists go, I think. Yeah, you know, it's been great. I think what I've learned more than anything on this stream is that 5 to 7 is not a very good time for us. I think. Yeah, it seems to me that it's harder to get people to show up it's Sunday night, probably because they're preparing for next week. Yeah, but thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you, Trombone and Ash and Mediocre. And the silent people who are hiding in the background, right? But Streamlabs isn't showing me because you're not live posting stuff. I think I saw Opti in there as well a while ago, and I know that the Groovy Lobster himself was here for a moment. So yeah, just thanks everybody for. Oh, hey Sid. Yeah, we're wrapping up. But the VOD will be there, and I hope that you guys like the new setup. I think it's going to be challenging to learn to like react while we're doing this, because obviously it becomes more of a performance now that our faces are there all the time. But yeah, man. Yeah, I get it, Trombone. You know, I decided that like I'd rather have David on than do a solo stream. And I think ultimately like that's the way to go. So that is kind of the way things are gonna run in the future. I hope the 1 to 3 times still works for you, and if it doesn't, we can push it around, but maybe not to evening on Sunday.
Yes, no, totally. And it's just this weekend, friends are in town, and that just affects how you can do things.
Yeah, I know. I mean, shit happens as well. Like I canceled. I had to cancel class on Friday because of some personal stuff that came up that I'm probably gonna have to go back to Virginia for here pretty soon. So, Yeah, which is gonna make running the show kind of hard. I didn't think about that. Maybe I'll try to weasel that in after we finish Stockroach up in the next few weeks. All right. So
All right. Thanks,
yeah,
everyone.
thank you guys so much. I'm gonna throw up some music, and we will see you on the way out.
Goodbye.
Don't slam your foot in the door or anything.
What do you want?